I never went to high school. I went to the 9th grade and dropped out because I thought I knew everything there was to know. And the high school that they wanted to send me to was in the neighborhood of a rival gang. I said, I'm not going. Oh boy, one of the worst mistakes I made in my life because I did not understand the value of what you guys are undergoing right now, the value of education, what that means. You've been hanging around the periphery of this group for a month. What do you want? I said, I don't know, I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to, you said, I'm going to give you this book. I want you to take it up to your cell and read this. You don't have to read it now, but read it, and when you come back, then we'll talk about it and see what you learn, see if you learn anything about it. I said, okay. And I knew that this was a key. At 12 midnight, the lights went off, and I eased to the door so I could catch some of the rays of the lights that are coming from the corridor as I sat down and just read in fascination.
Had quite an interesting journey inside a prison.
I did.
The beginning, you were a kind of a rather rebellious young man.
I was a youngster.
Who was caught up and had a lot of anger, a lot of struggle.
And as I just mentioned to these young folk, impulsive, naive to a degree, ignorant to a large degree.
But something shifted. Can you tell the story? We'd have to do it fairly briefly, but the story of when you got hold of man's search for meaning.
Oh,
that seemed like an important turning point.
It is.
For you.
It is. That was a very important point in my journey, and I think it's one that any and everyone in this room can relate to because you're already on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
I never went to high school. I went to the 9th grade and dropped out because I thought I knew everything there was to know. So, in those days, coming from Philadelphia, where there was a lot of what you call gang banging today, we call gang warring. We warred against one another, different neighborhoods. And the high school that they wanted to send me to was in the neighborhood of a rival gang. I said, I'm not going. I am not going. And I convinced my mother and father to sign me out of school, and I would do something I would do something else. Oh boy, one of the worst mistakes I made in my life because I did not understand the value of what you guys are undergoing right now, the value of education, what that means. You've all heard the saying that knowledge is power. Well, that's no joke. That is no joke. And me, the young, big-headed individual who thought he knew everything, began to realize I knew virtually nothing. Nothing.
All right, so you're in for a number of years, and the old heads, which you call like the old timers, which you were before you got out. You're still an old head. But so the old heads are the guys who are
run the joint.
They run everything.
The old heads run the joint.
So like the prison, when you have this building, this space with all of these people packed together, there's no way that thing is going to stay calm without the old heads, the prisoners themselves, being in control. Yeah.
There's a hierarchy, like in any society. I don't care what that society may be. There's a hierarchy. There is a top, middle, bottom level.
All right.
And me coming through as a youngster, brand new with a life sentence, all the swag in the world running around, I was on the bottom level.
But you thought you were on the top level.
I thought I was on the top level when I was in the street. Once I got into this environment, I recognized and realized that there's a whole lot you don't know, boy.
All right, so you're in for a while. You're trying to find your space, and these old heads give you a book.
Well, before they give me the book, the old heads, what they would do, this was the days before school inside. This was what I call the Shawshank Redemption days. Imagine being in an environment like this, you guys, with no cell phone, with no laptop, with no radio, with no TV, no electronics whatsoever, no means of communication. They didn't even have newspapers and periodicals and no magazines. Imagine. And this is every day.
So you're literally just in cages and
So
just
we had to revert and resort to the power of the word. We had to revert and resort to what has been with us since time out of mind, when the only means of transferring knowledge and history and events was by the griot, or the storyteller, or the elders, or the wise men, where we would sit at the feet of the wise men before we set out to do anything. We want to found a new village. I want to get married. We're going to war with the neighboring village. There's trouble, and we sat at the feet of the elders. Why? Because they were the wise ones. They knew. They had gone through everything that we had not. Your mothers, your fathers, your grandmothers, whenever I talk to a crowd, especially a crowd of young folk like you, I'm going to get back to that in a second, but I always admonish you and ask you, talk to some of the old people in your life. If you have grandmothers or grandfathers, call them up or stop over and go see them. And if you don't have that, the elders in your family. If you don't have that, the elders on the street where you live. If you don't have that, the elders that you see in your neighborhood. Stop them and say, how are you? How are you feeling? Do you have anything to tell me? Because they all have stories to tell, and we have relegated them to the abyss. We don't even listen to them anymore, and we all need to. So, the elders in the penitentiary were my old heads, and they would stand in a circle and talk, sharing knowledge amongst one another. And the young guys just running around hither and there. And I felt this. I felt that this was something important. And I would hang around the periphery and just listen. They look at me, I'd look this way. But I would listen to the conversation. And they talked about some of everything. Subjects and topics that I had no idea of. But now I'm learning. And one day they said, look, once we had started getting books in there, these things had started to change a bit. And he called me one day, and this old head that was from around my neighborhood, so he knew me. Irvin, come here. You've been hanging around the periphery of this group for a month. What do you want? I said, I don't know. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to, you said, I'm going to give you this book. I want you to take it up to your cell and read this. You don't have to read it now, but read it, and when you come back, then we'll talk about it and see what you learn, see if you learn anything about it. I said, okay. And I knew that this was a key. This was a key to entrance into this circle. I said, oh, all right now. I got the book, ran up to my cell, and threw it in the corner and said, man, you know, I don't need to read that. I don't know what I need to read that for. Next day, I'd grab the book, I'd go back down to the circle, I said, here you go. He said, you read that? I said, yeah. He said, how you like it? I said, it was good. It's all right. He looked at me, I saw that little glint in his eye. He says, okay, what do you think about the the central character, the protagonist. I didn't understand what that word meant. I said, who? He said, come here. And the thing about our old heads back in the day was that they could all fight. Every one of them knew how to fight. That was before the days of picking up a weapon and running up and down the street shooting people. These guys could all box and knew how to do this well. I went to the gym myself, but these guys were good. And we had respect for them for a number of reasons, but primarily because we knew they could kick our butts. He said, come here. I said, hey, man. He said, take this book, take it upstairs. Don't do this again. Read that book. Or don't. I took it upstairs and I'm stomping like this. I'm going on. You know how we do. You know how you do when you're a kid. And I went in my cell and sat down. I opened it. I said, all right. One thing about the penitentiary in those days, they turned the lights off in your cell at 12 midnight. Because there was no radio, there was no TV, there was no need for electricity. So the lights went off at 12 midnight. So, at 12, now I went upstairs with the book around 4 o'clock, 4 or 5. At 12 midnight, the lights went off, and I eased to the door so I could catch some of the rays of the lights that are coming from the corridor as I sat down and just read in fascination. Read in fascination as in terms of what words could do. I said, how is this possible? I was fascinated. Next morning, I finished the book. I finished the book that night, sleepy, as I am now, because I stayed up all night last night as well, taking care of some business. I have no problem doing that. So I walked down, gave him the book back, and stood right there. And he says, okay, what do you think about it? And I gave him a brief synopsis of what I thought the author intended. He looked at me, nodded, smiled, and says, you read it? I said, I did. He told the other old heads, I let him in there. And I had a spot in the circle. The book was called Man's Search for Meaning. If you have not read that, you need to. The author's name was Viktor Frankl. He was a logotherapist. He was also a concentration camp victim from the days of World War II, the Nazi Germany. And what the book was about was my life. Virtually, I mean, here we're in Poland, we're Germany, we're in concentration camps, and I'm in the United States, but the similarities were so blatant. I mean, my heart just, there are passages in the book I knew what he meant, and I knew what he was going to say, and I knew the result and the consequence of the actions that took place in the book. I just said, what? He's talking about me. He's talking about my life. He's talking about what's possible. And again, that was the beginning of my journey into higher education, into education period, into learning, into realizing that there is a universe of information and knowledge that surrounds us, that we have a responsibility to seek and attempt to obtain, and in so doing, share that gift with someone else. So inside, I became a teacher. I became one of the guys who got guys together and said, come on, y'all, come here, sit down. What do you know about this philosophy? What do you know about mathematics? What do you know about history? What do you know about civics, physics? What do you know about astronomy? I tried to learn everything there was to learn so that I could then give this to the brothers that are around me. Because one thing that I began to realize in that environment is that there are a lot of people inside who don't need to be there and only need a chance to learn that they can do and be better.
Hey, so that's a nice jumping off point for the next conversation, next things I want to talk about. But first, let me just summarize. So you're this person who in the most dire of circumstances, when one would imagine that your life was gone, you'd thrown it away, it was gone, you had nothing to live for, you found what you could live for, which was the journey of the mind, the heart, and the spirit. And then you took that journey, and you took the journey in the most unlikely of places. And which is, for me, so fascinating, because I started that journey when I was 2.5 years into my undergraduate career, sitting not in a class this size, in a much smaller class, and just one day I decided I just didn't want to be ignorant anymore. Like, I just wanted to understand the world, which is very much what happened to you.